The podcast is entitled A More Excellent Way. My name is Jay McLaughlin, host of what has been created to look at life, all aspects of it, through the lens of the Bible. To what end? To live the life that Christ desires all of us to experience abundantly. In John 10:10, it reads, "The thief cometh not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. I, Christ, am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly." Abundantly in the Greek is the word perissos, meaning exceedingly, abundantly, above, beyond measure. This being the first episode of the podcast, A More Excellent Way, I am honored to have joined me a person I've known all my life, and that being Reverend James Jerry McLaughlin, Sr., who just happens to be my father. So, Pastor, I thank you for serving as my guest on this maiden voyage.
It's an honor to be here, Jay, and I'm glad I'm aboard.
The topic, yes, again, of this, the first episode of A More Excellent Way, is change. And the goal is to make a case that change needs to be reoccurring in a person's life. In Ezekiel 34:24, it states, "I will bless them, and the places surrounding my hill, it will be a blessing. I will send down showers in season. There will be showers of blessing." We believe that we are to be blessed all the time, every day. But reading Ezekiel 34:24, God states, "I send down blessings and showers of seasons." Therefore, based upon Ezekiel 34:24, there is a season, and there are seasons that you and I will experience difficult times. But for me, the difficult times are to wake up the ability to change. I now share with you an incident I experienced a few years ago. Having ended a phone conversation, I thought about where I was in life, and I felt that I was not where I should be in terms of growth, mainly professionally, to include my position as well as my earnings. It so happened within minutes of the ending of that phone call, my father called, and I was able to tell him what I was feeling. So my father, seeking to make sure he understood my concern, repeated what troubled me. You said, "Now let me get this straight. As a result of this phone call that you just had, you've come to the conclusion that you are not where you feel you should be professionally." I replied, yes, as at that time, that was the state I was in. So the first question was, if you had to choose between pain and pleasure,
I remember now.
what would you choose? And, I'm thinking it's some trick question. So I'm
Okay.
thinking, that's an easy one, pleasure.
Okay.
And then you came back with another question. You asked, if you had to choose between pain and agony, what would you choose? And I said pain, thinking that one was less than the other. And then you said, well, welcome the pain. You want to explain why you came back with that statement?
Old people tell stories, young people deal with events. And I remember in New York City, the mayor at the time was
Edward Koch.
Edward Koch. At the time, the apple had a worm in it, a big worm. And so Edward Koch called an expert in to help solve the problem. The expert came in the room, didn't introduce himself, went up to the board and wrote two words. On one end, he wrote joy and pain. And he turned and he said, "If you had to make a choice, what would you choose?" And everybody said, joy. That's a no-brainer. He raced the board and he turned and wrote pain and agony. And he turned to the audience and say, "You don't have a choice between joy and pain. You have a choice between pain and agony. What would you choose?" And they said, "The lesser of the two. I'll take pain." And he said, "This is where the apple is right now. So we have to work from the context and the situation in which we're in and solve the problem. So when you told me your situation, I wanted you to understand that you were dealing with pain or agony, and the lesser would be pain. So all of the change that would be coming in your life immediately dealt with change. And let me say this, son, change is painful when you've never hardly experienced pain and agony.
Interestingly enough, I was hosting a morning show at the time, and we spoke. That was around 7 or 8 o'clock that evening when you and I spoke. But what you shared with me didn't hit me. The morning show that I hosted, it was Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., I think, to 10 a.m. I would arrive at the station at 3 a.m. to prepare for that program. And no, I think it was 6 to 10. The show was 6 to 10. I would get to the station at 3 to prepare to be on from 6 to 10. And it was a few minutes before 3 o'clock before I got to the station. And what you said that night hit me while I was in the car. And I was so excited about what I heard. I said to you, don't say anything. I'm going to go on the air and I'm going to share with the listening audience what you said. One of the things I was excited about is you didn't share with me the old adage whereby one would say, well, in order to get something you've never had, you've got to do something you've never done. The way you presented it to me, there was a process, and it caused me to think. So, as the pastor said, the late Ed Koch was mayor of New York City, which we know as the Big Apple. And the Apple, I was reading last night, had some major challenges. They were hurting financially. They had racial tension. Infrastructure needed attention. And there was crime. And Ed Koch needed a plan. And as the pastor said, they had someone come in, and what he gave them was not what they expected. But he says, this is where you are. And the way I look at it, when it comes to change, change is inevitable. But you were talking about pain. And the way I look at it, the reason we associate change with pain is because we've been comfortable doing. You said to me, I remember, I was like, what are you talking about? You said, well, what you're telling me is that where you are in life right now, you are not satisfied. You have not reached where you anticipated you would be. So you feel that you're behind professionally, in your position, and in your earnings. So what you have done all your life has brought you to this place that you just defined for me. Hey, I feel I'm behind. I feel I should be further in what I make and what I am doing. So you said, logically, if what you've been doing over these years has brought you to this conclusion, it'd be delusional for you to think that you can continue to do this and be at a different state a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Something's got to change. So you think about, okay, he's right. I can't continue to do what I did 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. There has to come about a change. But we equate change with pain over the years that brought us to this place. We're accustomed to doing what we've always done. We do it well. We're familiar with it. It becomes a routine and it becomes comfortable. So what you were telling me is, Jay, you're going to have to do something different. And it is going to cause some discomfort. And you are not going to like it because you've been so accustomed to doing what you have been doing over these years, which has brought you to this result, and you're not happy. So, son, let me give it to you straight. If you want to change things in your life, you're going to have to change. And as that gentleman said to Mayor Koch and his team, it's going to be painful because it's not going to be comfortable. And here's something I'd like to add too. What happens is there's a disruption. What you said to me brought about a disruption in my life that I really didn't want to deal with. But when I'm looking in that mirror and I'm looking to myself and I'm having that hard conversation in my head, what I thought about is, Jay, what your father said is right. If you want to change, you are going to have to change. And you're going to have to welcome the pain. You're going to have to welcome the disruption. And you're going to have to welcome the discomfort. Now, you can play games with yourself and not change, but you will meet yourself a year, 2, 3 years down the road in the same position you are right now. I had a friend who said we would talk about goals we had and what we were going to do. And he said, let me tell you, if we find ourselves in this spot a year from now, shame on us. Shame on us, because we know that we've got to change. We know we've got to do these things. So what I wanted to get across today, I wanted to share what you shared with me. And like I said, I didn't get it until 3 o'clock that next morning. And when I got it, I wanted to share it with everyone I could. So what would you say to that person?
Well, listening to you, Jay, my mind goes back to when I was very young, and I told my mother, I was the baby in the family. I said, Mom, I'll never, ever catch up. I'll never do anything great. And my mother said to me, if you can be best, be first. And I said, wow, how's that going to help me, Mom? And as I grew, that thought penetrated my mind, and I began to deal with how I had to change. And then my question was, well, how do I change? She said, if you can be best, be first. Then I discovered that first beats best. So most of my life, Jay, I never tried to be best at first. I always wanted to be first before I was best, because that drove me. And so the only thing constant in this world is change. And it's amazing what the brain does. The brain is designed to protect the individual where the brain is. So the brain will never challenge you. The brain is to protect you. It'll never challenge you to do more than you need to do. That's the preservation of it. But the motivation comes in with a drive. We realize I have to change. And so I always look, now where do I start? And where I started was a poem I came across. And it said, if you can keep your head when all around you is losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you and make allowances for them too, if you can dream and not make dream your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters the same. So I learned what is the first step in change, which is very painful. And then after a while, pain becomes a way of life as you progress. I learned from that. Do the things you fear most first. Get that out the way. And so I learned to accept pain not as a stumbling stone. I learned pain as a stepping stone, son. And so those things I remember, those things that strengthen me, is what I gravitated to. So I never look for an easy road to accomplish change because it's not easy, it's not comfortable, but you must learn. And let me say this, oak trees, I love trees. And I would study and I say, why is that oak tree so tall and so strong? And no matter what the wind goes, it just keeps growing and getting larger. And I learned that an oak tree, when the wind is blowing on the south side, there's a tap root in the ground on the north side. Wherever the wind blows, there's a tap root on the opposite side of that wind to strengthen that oak tree. Now, change, that's change. And the other thing I realized, the only thing constant is change. So change is a part of our life. And pain even borders on agony sometimes. And so what you try to do the thing that you fear most. And in doing that, you learn to put in your body, in your mind, like the oak tree, a taproot on the opposite side of that to strengthen you. Now, I didn't mention my faith, and that's very, very, very strong with me. But change is so constant. Somebody says, well, God never changes. And somebody said, yes, he changes constantly. Well, how does he change? He's moving towards all of us. He's moving towards his creation. He's constantly moving to strengthen us.
As I listen to you, I think about the purpose of starting this podcast, and I'm honored, as I stated earlier, to have you, Dad, as my first guest and to join me on this first episode. And the goal is to help all of us live the life that Christ desires for all of us to live. He states that we would have life and that we would have it more abundantly. Again, I read earlier in John 10:10, I, Christ, am come that they might have life and they might have it more abundantly. The goal is not to preach to you, not saying that that won't happen, but that's not the intent. And I just wanted to leave those of you who are listening with a little something I came across. Anytime God seeks to use someone, he is going to disturb your comfort. And you say, well, Jay, give me an example. Well, Abraham was raised in a home with his father, his mother, his family. God decides he's going to do something great through Abraham. So he disrupts his life. He tells Abraham to leave his parents, leave his home. Technically a disturbance that is discomforting. Abraham asked God, well, God, where am I going? God replies, I'll tell you when you get there. This is the unknown. But the change, the disturbance, the discomfort, as well as the unknown, led to Abraham becoming great. But in that process, Abraham had to rely on God. And I think it was a process whereby he had to wean himself from his family. I believe God wanted him to solely trust in God alone. I constantly recite that God is omniscient, he's omnipresent, and he's omnipotent. He's every place at the same time. He's all-knowing, and he's all-powerful. And I say to myself, well, I think to myself sometimes, then why are you not further? You should be further. When you have a power at your fingertips, like I just described, you should be able to do anything. The challenge there, I believe, is Christ has two titles. We could have 1,000 people line up and say to them, hey, we've got someone who can save you. That person who needs saving would say, well, sure, all right, fine. So they're in line, they come up to us and they said, well, I need saving because I have a challenge with this addiction I have. Okay, well, Christ can save you. And they turn around and they walk away and say, oh, great, this is great. And say, well, wait a minute, where are you going? He says, well, dude, you told me this Christ can save me. I'm good. I'm going. Well, he has two titles. He's Savior, but he's also a Lord. And I think that's where the challenge comes in for a lot of people. I mean, who is God to tell me what to do? But he has redeemed us. But let me go back to when God uses his children, he will disrupt and bring about some discomfort. Moses was comfortable being the prince of Egypt. He got the education. He had access to all the power and wealth again in Egypt. But a change in his life occurs. God gives Moses a passion for the deliverance of people. This act of deliverance resulted in his becoming a fugitive, a disturbance that led to him being uncomfortable. I just see a pattern there coming up. I thought, hey, I shouldn't have to deal with this. I shouldn't have to deal with this adversity, but it's that adversity that is going to build character in you and really establish a strong foundation whereby you can do the things God has called you to do. So I'm excited about this first episode. I really wanted to share, Pastor, what you gave me that night because it was different. I didn't expect it. When you made sure that you understood what I was going through, you asked me those questions. If you had to choose between joy and pain, what would you choose? I said joy. You asked me if I had to choose between pain and agony, what would I choose? I said, well, pain, thinking that one was less than the other. But the bottom line is, in order to bring about a shift for the positive in your life, there has to be change. And because most of us equate change with pain because we're having to do things that we haven't had to do all these years, which has resulted in our current state, whereby for me, I wasn't happy. Yes, but as you would say to me after we had that conversation, you would call and say, hey, well, how are you doing today? And I said, well, I'm welcoming the pain because I know that that pain is going to help get me out of the situation and the state that I'm currently in. So I want to thank you for joining me for this first episode of A More Excellent Way. And I plan to have more of Reverend McLaughlin join us and talking about those things that affect us here, not only in this country, but the world. So keep listening for more. Reverend, do you want to add something before we go?
Yeah, I want to first of all thank you for the opportunity to be on this voyage with you, this initial voyage. There's a lot of things running through my mind because I remember you when you were a baby. I babysit you. I remember you when you were a teenager. I took you to school. I remember you when you had aspirations to use your gift in radio. I followed you from, I'm kidding, from the Atlantic to the Pacific and all in between. I'm exaggerating, but from the South to the North. And at this stage, I'm excited about what you're attempting to do, and I want to be a part of what you're doing, and I want to be supportive of you. And in my closing remarks, thank you for the privilege. One of the things I want to do one of these days in your podcast, you interview me, but your father wants to interview you. And I say that because I grew up and I realized this, that there is, for men, for African American men, there's always been a question that I wanted to ask my father that I never had the courage in asking. And so I believe that when a father has a son, there's always a question he wants to ask that he doesn't have the courage in asking. So I close with this prayer, and I've given you this, and I mean it. Lord, may I become the man my father never was, so that my son can become the man I never shall be. Thank you, son. God bless you. and success to you in all your endeavors. And wherever I can help, I want to help you. Love you.
Love you too. Love you too, Dad. I want to thank Reverend James Jerry McLaughlin Sr. for joining me on this first episode of A More Excellent Way. I want to thank you as well. My name is Jay McLaughlin. Again, the podcast is entitled A More Excellent Way.